Hey everybody, welcome back to the Calibrate Tools DIY channel. I am live, live in concert on the channel here, like I am every Tuesday around this time. Sometimes I am not because I got other things going on, but I try to make it every Tuesday. Until that changes, here I am. So hope everybody's doing fine, and we're gonna dive right into the topic. Okay, a generation that can't change a tire. How do we get here? Yeah, pretty much been asking that question for quite a while now, and I see a few, I would say, enlightened individuals online asking the same question. So I figured I'd jump into the discussion and give my little 2 cents on it with the help of data. I try to back my assertions and opinions by data, so I won't just be up here flapping my gums just to hear myself talk. So anyway, guys, what percentage of the question is, what percentage of today's youth actually know how to use basic tools, and why does that matter? Okay, now we're not talking about you know them being able to participate in some advanced welding project or use a CNC machine, or know how to use that kind of stuff. We're just talking about the basic fundamentals here, the basic skills that I think every young person, or every person really, should know, and that includes all genders. All right, it's not gender specific here. Um, yeah. So, what percentage do you think knows how to use the basic? I'm talking about a hammer, nails, screwdrivers. Right. What's the difference between a flathead and a Phillips? Um, Reading. I'm not saying I'm the greatest reader myself, but I've seen some clips online where the guys that be out that are on the street, interviewing people, and there's this one person. He asked them to read a certain sentence that he has written on a card, and I couldn't believe that most of the people, and these are mostly young people, they couldn't even read the sentence. They couldn't even finish it. And I was like, what's going on here in these schools? Who's teaching these kids, right? The educational system has failed them. I mean, reading is one of the most basic skills that we all should know. And really, at the end of the day, it's I think it's half of the equation. It's reading, and then the ability to understand what you read, and also articulate what you just read, or articulate what you understood from that. Reading comprehension skills. But the fact that these young people couldn't even finish the sentence without, just butchering the words is like, what's going on here? I can understand if you're a foreigner and English is your second language. I get it. But you can tell that English was not the second language of these people that were asked. And it wasn't a joke. It wasn't a skit. It was actually real life. And it was very sobering to see that our young people today lack some of the basic skills. I'm talking, these are people that are out of high school, um, they lack one of the most fundamental skills that everybody should have to be able to survive. It's like, how are you surviving and not being able to read? And I know some people do it, but you'd be surprised. Even there are some people that you would never think that their reading is that bad. And this is not a judgment or anything. Like I said, I'm not the greatest reader myself, but some of these people make more money than you do, and you read way better than them. And it's crazy. But anyway, yeah. So what else? Changing a light fixtures, unclogging a drain, changing your car's oil, something like that. Using basic tools like pliers, wrenches, things like that. Okay. Now, this channel is about tools and about the trades and all that stuff. But what I just listed, right? Using hammer and nails, reading skills, changing lights, changing light bulbs, stuff like that. That's not, those are not trade skills. That's basic life skills that you should have, or anybody should have, right? Let alone a young person. So the fact that these life skills are lacking in today's generation Whereas before, in previous generations, it was second nature. Like I said, it's a sobering fact, and that needs to be addressed. And that's one of the reasons why I created this channel, right? To kind of solve this issue that we have. So what percentage, though? Let's get back to the core question. What percentage of young people can actually do these things? And if, in order for me to give you like an honest answer, I dove into the data, and I'm going to go ahead and lay it out for you. All right, so here we go. Now, this data may be skewed depending on, where it's from, but it's unfortunately in this, if in the Western world, it focuses mainly when you're looking up stuff or researching stuff. If you're not that specific, it's going to default to Western culture. Okay, that means Western countries like United States, English-speaking Western countries, United Kingdom. So just understand that as I read this. It's still even though it's skewed, it's still a good. It's still giving us some idea of what's going on here. It says a 2019 survey conducted in the United Kingdom by the home improvement brand, blah, 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 found that nearly 1 in 3 adults under 35, the age of 35, had never picked up a hammer. All right. So that's 1/3, right? And amongst those aged 16 to 24, more than half reported feeling completely lost when faced with basic home repairs. In the United States, surveys from organizations like the Home Improvement Research Institute and various vocational education programs or groups paint a similar picture. Studies suggest that fewer than 20% of high school graduates today feel confident performing basic maintenance tasks around the home that their grandparents would have considered second nature. Okay, so what else here? And in 2022, a poll was taken on behalf of a home warranty company that said 68% of millennials and Gen Z respondents admitted that they had called a professional for a repair. They later discovered that they probably could have done themselves if they'd only known how. So we're not talking about a small gap here. We're talking about, a skills crisis, a generational skills crisis that's happening, or it's been happening for the longest time. All right. So how do we get here? Right? How do we get here? Well, like I always talk about, the death of the shop class. Shop class died a long time ago. It was killed off in favor of, getting a college degree. Right? I'm talking to if you've been watching my channel for any length of time, I'm probably speaking to the choir here. But it begs repeating because it's just the truth. Sometimes the truth is just so in your face that you can't help but repeat it. Okay, so it says if you're over 40, you probably remember shop class, wood shop, metal shop, auto mechanics in high school. These were the standard fixtures in American education from the 1900s through the 1980s. What happened, though, is the question. It says beginning in the 1990s and accelerating through the 2000s, okay, schools across the country began eliminating vocational hands-on education programs. Why is that? It says budget cuts, a cultural push towards college for everyone, and an educational philosophy that increasingly valued academic achievement over practical skills. This is where the stigma, guys, of working with your hands started to develop, right? People started looking down on anybody that got dirty for money or got dirty for a living. And so it became a lost art, right? And so that's what happened. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but when you think about it, right, most people know about what I just read there, okay? But they don't think any further than that. Me, on the other hand, coming from the community that I come from, I'm thinking about, okay, how did it affect my community, right? It affected my community the worst because those skills were probably needed the most in my community. All right. So if you have a system that's hell bent on disenfranchising certain communities, then that would be the logical step to make, right? That would be the logical chess move, is to pull the rug from under that community, that rug that supported skill trades, educational programs, and that at least gave people a shot at life who wouldn't have otherwise had a shot. Okay, because believe it or not, back in the Reconstruction era, right, African Americans relied on their trade skills to build their own communities. Okay, so and they had to, but when their communities were destroyed and they were forced to go into schools where they, there were shop classes and stuff like that, but then those shop classes were taken away, right? And it kind of coincided with, now I think about it, the 1980s was when smugs, okay, if you want to use that term, drugs started to infiltrate the African American communities and other communities as well. So, when you connect the dots, you see a concerted effort to further undermine an already struggling community, okay? Because everybody didn't have the funds to go to college, and they knew this. So that would leave them, these communities, more vulnerable to doing whatever they had to do to survive, right? And unfortunately, I'm sure you would probably see a parallel rise in the production of prisons, the prison industrial complex. Okay, running alongside these or concurrent with these events that were happening. But if you're not thinking about that, you're like, So yeah, when I think about these issues, I'm thinking about it on a in a more broader perspective there, to really try to understand what happened and the devastation that it did to certain communities, right? All right, so let's continue. Now, you can take that how you want to take that, but I do really think there's some validity to it. All right, so it says budget cuts, cultural push towards college for everyone, educational philosophy that increasingly valued academic achievement over practical skill. Between 1990 and 2020, enrollment in vocational and technical education programs at the high school level dropped by nearly 50% in many states. Shop classes were converted into computer labs, funding dried up, teachers retired and weren't replaced. All right. Now, at face value, you would say, well, yes, that was a step in the right direction, because look at how society is today. Everything relies on computers. I'm talking to you from a computer right now. You're probably looking at me from a computer, whether it's a computer in your hand or whatever on the desk. I get it, yes. But what we fail to acknowledge is that, this whole internet thing relies on infrastructure, right? excuse me for a second. It relies on infrastructure. It relies on towers. It relies on underground cables. It relies on, many structural changes had to be made, right? That required tradespeople, people that knew what they were doing, electricians, HVAC people, all kinds of trades, okay? To get this internet to run, for me even to talk to you, or you to even listen to me or see me, okay? And so what that produced, or what taking shop class out of schools and stuff like that, and pushing people more towards computers, what happened was not everybody was going to graduate from school and get a job in tech. So where were that percentage of people, or students or young people, where were they going to be left to go, right? Everybody, as a matter of fact, a lot of people who have these advanced degrees in tech can't even find a job right now. I came across a few people on the internet that had very advanced IT degrees that were still looking for work. They found it very hard to find work. So, you know, it's a supply and demand issue. It's probably less jobs, okay, and more people looking for them. So that's the problem right now. But if these people had other skills that they could fall back on, right? Or if everybody wasn't necessarily going into that part of the tech field where they're just maybe sitting at a computer or working in or doing some kind of networking job, but they were more trained in the infrastructure side, right? Then maybe it wouldn't be as much of a problem. So now you see a lot of people going into the trades right now, right? Where they're actually using their hands and all of that, okay? Because people are waking up. They see a gap here. So that gap is going to eventually be filled, thank goodness, because there is a skilled trade shortage. All right. What's the other reason? Okay, outsourcing of everything. At the same time, schools were abandoning hands-on education. The economy was making it easier to outsource practically everything. Okay, it lists here these things that have been outsourced as TaskRabbit, Angie. I think they're talking about Angie's List. YouTube tutorials that make you think you know how to do something without ever actually practicing it. Same day delivery for anything you might need. Now let's back up here. I'm doing YouTube tutorials myself, and disclaimer, I do know how to do these things I'm talking about because I demonstrate how they're done. So there you go with that. But yeah, what they're saying is that everything is basically, you don't have to learn anything these days, or do it yourself, right? When you can hire a handy person off of, say, like a TaskRabbit or an Angie's List. So because convenience, all right, has been multiplied in today's society, where all you got to do is just click a button and somebody's at your door willing to do your bidding or do your service or whatever service that you have them to do. People are not worrying about, I need to get learn a skill or anything like that. I don't have to do all that. I'll just, go on this website and somebody come to my house. So that's another reason. Okay. The convenience aspect. So, why learn something when you can just hire somebody to fix it for whatever amount of money that is. Okay. So if you got the disposable income, you can do that. All right. Smaller homes and smaller yards, less space to learn. Generationally, fewer young people grew up in environments where tools were part of the daily life. Okay. As more families moved into apartments, condos, the workshop in the garage, the place where a parent might teach a child how to build and fix and create, all that kind of disappeared. We live in these cities where everybody's living on top of each other. Nobody, it's not like the pioneering days where, you had to learn how to fix a tractor. You had to learn how to, do this or that, right? So we see that our living environments have, in a sense, contributed to this lack of desire to learn stuff, right? And so, we're left with people twiddling their thumbs, wondering, okay, how I don't, or saying to themselves, I don't need to fix this. I'll just call somebody, right? And says, what else? Then there's the technology of today. Kids are growing up as native users of smartphones, tablets, and computers. Their problem-solving instincts are oriented towards digital interfaces, not physical ones. All right. Come on, the rise of the video games, right? You got some adults in today's world that are addicted to video games. That's, so they're living in two alternate worlds, right? So you have all these different elements, affecting how young people see the world, right? If their face is buried in a phone all day, or if it's buried in a video game all day, they have no desire to really problem solve in the external world, in the physical world, right? And one of the great things about these basic life skills is that it's a problem-solving machine, right? When I said basic life skills, I'm talking about what I just listed before, using the basic tools and all that. You're solving problems. And me personally, I think the mind actually needs to be immersed in some kind of problem-solving activities in order for it to develop correctly. But these kids today, they're solving, and young adults are solving problems inside a video game, right? Or inside of TikTok or a chat bot or something like that, right? That's where their attention is focused right now. So all these things pulled, like I said, with the external factor of just taking shop class out of school and all that stuff, and conditioning the minds of young people just to not even think about learning how to use basic tools, right? What the hell do I need a hammer for? Why do I need a screwdriver, right? Why do I need to learn how to read a tape measure? So as a result, we have what we have today, okay? So let's see here. Why should we really care about what I'm talking about right now, right? Well, number one, financial independence. Financial independence, okay? Everything's tied in. Even these basic skills I just listed earlier in this live could save you a whole bunch of money. It says the average American business owner, well, no, I'm sorry, not business owner, but could be both, homeowner spends between $2,000 and $6,000 per year on home repairs and maintenance, okay? The majority of that cost is labor, not materials, like I pointed out in another live. So if you know how to patch drywall, fix a leaky faucet, replace an outlet, you're saving money, okay? Thousands of dollars every year for the rest of your life, if you really add it up. So for a young person going into adulthood, and they have all this student debt, okay, and stuff like that, basic tool knowledge really is a form of tackling that debt. Okay. Once again, skilled trade shortage. I really don't need to say much about that because I've been talking about that forever on these lives. But a quick recap, okay? The Associated Builders and Contractors estimate that the construction industry alone needs to attract nearly 550,000 additional workers over and above normal hiring to meet current demand. Says the National Electrical Contractors Association projects a shortage of tens of thousands of electricians over the next decades. Plumbers, HVAC technicians, welders, carpenters, the people who keep our physical world functioning are aging out of the workforce, and not enough young people are stepping in to replace them. Now, I wonder if the same phenomena is happening in other countries like, say, China, right? Or I doubt it, right? I would think they see what's going on. Like, they would be more on top of something like this. It seems like they wouldn't just let their country fall apart, right? They would make sure that they have a skilled trades or a skilled workforce that's, that can meet the demand, right? So they're not going to let that workforce dwindle down to the levels that we have now. Okay, I would think if you did a study about how they run their stuff and how we've ran our stuff, I think you'll see some very different numbers. Okay, so yeah. All right, what else here? And here's the kicker: these are not low-paying jobs. It says the median salary for an electrician in the United States is over 60 grand a year, with experienced tradespeople regularly earning six figures with little to no student debt. It says we've spent a generation telling kids to avoid working with their hands, while the people who do are building extraordinary careers. All right. What's the next one here? Problem solving and resilience. We just touched on that. It says there's something that happens when you work through a physical problem with tools. You develop a relationship, okay, with cause and effect that is immediate, tangible, and deeply instructive. You tighten the bolt too much, it strips. You don't use the right saw blade, the cut tears. You skip the level, the shelf sags. Okay. Now, if you like to work with your hands and you've done a few projects over your lifetime, you will experience the reward of completing a project. Okay. Because you can see it, it's tangible, right? And I think that does something, right? When you start or you build something from scratch or you fix something, and you can see that it's working, and all that, it does something, and it does something to the reward centers in the brain, I think, which I think is very, very important for children to have, right? So when they took shop class out of schools, where they were building projects in shop class, even cooking class or home ec or something like. Remember back in the days when they had home ec? The fact that you built something or baked something, completed it, is very, like I said, is very, very critical to a child's confidence, right? Because once they see they can do that, then automatically the synapses started firing in their heads. Like, man, if I can do that, then I can do this. And so you're producing a more confident human being that goes out into the world. Okay, not just a person that just ingested a bunch of information from a book, but they actually use their hands to build something, to create something. Okay, and that's the kind of population you want: creators, builders. Right now, we live in a consumerist society, right? Most of us are just consumers. We're not builders. We're not producers, right? Because that fire has been kind of taken away from us, and so we just consume. It's almost like being in the Matrix, where that's all we're good for, right? All right, so real world tools give real world feedback, and the feedback builds a kind of resilient problem solving capacity that translates far beyond the workshop. It says studies in cognitive development consistently show that manual hands-on skill building supports spatial reasoning, the motor development, patience, and creative thinking. Kids who build things think differently and often more effectively than those who don't. Pretty much what I was saying before. Okay. Emergency preparedness. Finally, let's talk about that. All right. Natural disasters, power outages, emergencies, okay, things you can't control. These are the times when you cannot call the handyman. You can't call the contractor to come and help you. So at times like that, you're going to need somebody to at least have some basic skills to be able to know how to shut off the water or patch a broken window or get a generator or something like that to work, or maybe in your car to work, right? These are essential things, but most of us don't think about that because until something happens, right? Until we get hit in the face, but then it's too late because nobody was thinking about it before. So it's these basic skills are just these are essential to have, right? In order to just lead your family right. Okay, when a father takes their son to come out back or go in the garage and work on stuff or work on the car with him, that's true leadership right there. Okay, because he's teaching that young man or young woman to be able to protect their family when they get older or whatever like that. So these are generational skills that have that should be passed down, right? If you have a child right now, if you have a young man especially with you, you should make sure, right, that child is educated, that child knows how to read. Okay, that's the number one thing. And just teach them some basic hands-on skills. They don't have to be a tradesman at all. They don't have to go into the trades. But like I said, these are life skills. These are not trade skills I'm talking about. All right. And that's one of the reasons I created this channel, guys, because I want to kind of fill that gap and be that person for, who wants to know how to use that tool or whatever. Okay. But these are very important elements to a fully functioning, family there, that has a good leader on their side, just like a mother would lead their daughters in certain ways, right? How to do the things that a mother would, that would teach a young lady, right? All right, so there is good news, guys. There is, there's a return of more vocational programs coming out there. Okay. It says, after decades of neglect, there is a growing movement to bring hands-on education back into schools. States like Tennessee, Texas, and Georgia have made significant investments in career and technical education. All right. Vocational education. Okay. At the high school level, programs in construction, electrical, automotive, manufacturing are being rebuilt and rebranded as high value pathways, not consolation prizes for kids who can't make it in college. Okay. So that's a very important difference right there in how they are rebranding the trades, taking away that stigma from it and putting it on the same level as a college degree. Because, a lot of kids today are probably not getting into the trades because of the stigma that has been attached to it. So changing that perception of using your hands, right, and your head, because I'll tell you right now, a lot of these trades are just as technical as any other skill, or if not more. You still have to know science, chemistry, math, right? In the trades, I mean, it's like the trades is like going to college, but using your hands at the same time. That's all it is. So I would, some of these trades, you could say that person is more skilled than a person that just knows how to write a math formula on the chalkboard and solve it there. But do they really know how to solve it in the real world, in the 3D world, right? Well, you're going to be solving these problems in the 3D world when you get into the trades and know how to use your hands. So you're going to have a higher sense of accomplishment there because you applied that book knowledge to whatever you're doing, right? Learn how to bend a pipe, right? Just ask a electrician the math involved in bending a pipe, right? I mean, we see these pipes and all that stuff around, but there's math involved in bending a pipe correctly at the correct degree so we can, do what it do. Okay, so to speak. All right. So what else is going on here to improve this condition? It says in cities across the country, a different kind of institution is quietly thriving. The maker space, community workshops where anyone, adult, teenager, child, can walk in, borrow tools, get instruction, and build something. Tool libraries operate on a similar model, lending out drills, saws, and other equipment the way a traditional library lends books. Yeah, okay. I got to look for some of those spaces in this community here. I would love to find out. Then you have YouTube and social media. It says it would be unfair to acknowledge this for all the ways screens have distanced young people from hands-on skills. They've also created extraordinary resources for self-teaching. So yeah, I did knock kind of, being glued to our phones all day. But at the end of the day, it's not the phone. It's not the screen. It's what you're ingesting in that screen. So these things can be like going to college if you know how to use it right. Right. I mean, you can teach all kinds of things. That's what I do on here. Right. So and you could reach a whole bunch of people if you're actually teaching on this than just maybe a class full of 20 people. You can reach millions of people. So it's not necessarily the technology that's bad. It's just the misdirection of the subject matter and just the ability to be distracted with a whole bunch of other things on that same tech. That's the problem right there. All right. But as far as accessibility, there's no time like today in terms of the accessibility of information. Okay. It's right there. Okay. So what can you do right now as a family? If you're a parent whatever, you know, uncle, aunt, grandparent. Um, the most important thing you can do right now is expose your child to some kind of hands-on skill. Okay. If you're working on something, have your kid next to you, showing them something, right? Not only are you teaching them something, but you're bonding with that kid. They'll remember that for the rest of their life. And you know, these are unforgettable memories that are priceless. Okay. So if you can figure something out to teach them, and maybe you and them can learn together, hey, what bigger reward is that? Okay. Now, in closing, guys, let's see here. So what percentage of today's youth know how to use basic tools at the end of the day? It says, depending on how you measure, somewhere between 15% and 40% have meaningful confidence with everyday hand tools and basic repair tasks, which means anywhere from 60 to 85% go into their adulthood not knowing what's going on. Okay, totally lost. Okay, not knowing these basic skills I just mentioned, which are life skills. Okay, so that's a problem. Right. My goal, my mission is to close that gap. And I really have a chip on my shoulder because my community suffers the most. Right. I see these young men out here going after the wrong things, going after the wrong things. And they don't have the leadership and guidance to really tell them, hey, listen, learn some kind of skill, right? I don't care if you get your CDL, so you can go drive trucks, because, I've been in the trucking industry, so I know what it can do as a leg up or even as a business opportunity. And the barrier to entry is pretty low, but if you, at the end of the day, it's about financial freedom and lightening that financial burden on them and their future generations. So if you get into something where you're not as financially strapped, but you're able to make a good income, right? If you're focused and stick with it, then do that. Okay, because we're gonna have to pull ourselves out of this, whatever it is that we've been in for the longest. But we can't do that with our young kids, especially our young men, being lost and not knowing where to look. They need guidance, just like you needed guidance. They need guidance. And for us to ignore that and relegate them to the trash heap of ignorance, that's a reflection on who we are. So that's one of the reasons I started this channel, guys. So I'm getting ready to come out with a course, guys. Like I said, it should be in a month or so. I think the last live I said about a month and a half, putting everything together. Sometimes this tech stuff takes a while to put together, guys. And, it's Power Tool Academy. That's the name of it. And I want you guys to grab that, if not for you, for your kids. It's just, basic tools and that they should be familiar with. Okay. And it's going to be in an organized form, and it's going to be a good reference material, and it's something that they should be exposed to. So anyway, guys, that's it for tonight. I appreciate you coming on, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.